Good evening, friends. On behalf of ICFAI, I welcome all of you to this 141st Leadership Conversation. Today, we are delighted, excited, and very fortunate to have none other than Dr. Mashelkar join us. Please, all of you, join me in welcoming Mashelkar, sir. Sir, welcome and good evening, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for agreeing to speak on this Leadership Conversations platform. Taking this time for us from your busy schedule is an amazing thing. I thought that it will take much longer time to get a slot from you, but you've been kind enough to give me a slot as early as possible. This is something very interesting and big for us. It'll be very useful. This is one of the best sessions it's going to be as part of our WiseViews. Without much ado, allow me to share my screen and I'll do the intro and quickly we'll get on to the proceedings. These are WiseViews sessions. As I mentioned, every Friday we conduct this, and this is the 141st session. And Dr. Mashelkar is talking about transformational science leadership. We are going to learn lessons from his own journey. So this intro and the opening talk by Dr. Mashelkar will be for about 30 minutes. And another 30 to 40 minutes will be the Q&A. Very quickly, we will sum it up after that. Let me take this as a great opportunity and a privilege to introduce a highly distinguished individual who is with us right now, Dr. Raghunath Anant Mashelkar. He is a living legend, and he is known for his pioneering scientific research contributions, his transformational leadership, his tireless advocacy for inclusive innovation, his global championing of balanced intellectual property rights, and his influential role in shaping the science, technology, and innovation policies in post-liberalized India. Dr. Mashelkar served as the Director General of the very popular Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and as President of Indian National Science Academy, Chairman of National Innovation Foundation, NIF, very big and very popular, and also the President of Global Research Alliance, a network of RTOs from US, Europe, Asia, Pacific, and Africa, and around consisting of 60,000 scientists. There are several, it becomes very difficult for us when you do the introduction of such an distinguished individual. There are several achievements and accomplishments. We have just listed a few. 48 universities from around the world have honored him with honorary doctorates. That gives you a slight measure of the leader that we have with us this evening. He has also won the JRD Corporate Leadership Award. He is the only scientist to win it so far. He has received the Business Week USA Award of Stars of Asia at the hands of the former president of USA, George Bush Sr. He was the first Asian scientist to receive this award. He was elected as a Fellow of Royal Society, FRS. His name reflects that. Foreign Associate of US National Academy of Science, Foreign Associate of National Academy of Engineering, Associate Foreign Member, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, Fellow of Royal Academy of Engineering, UK, Fellow of World Academy of Arts and Science, USA, Fellow of US National Academy of Inventors. And he won the TWAS Lenovo Science Prize, which is the highest science award of the World Academy of Science. This is highly prestigious. The President of India honored Dr. Mashelkar with Padma Shri in 1991, with Padma Bhushan in 2000, and with Padma Vibhushan in 2014. Three of the highest civilian honors in this country. Dr. Mashelkar has been on the board of directors of several reputed companies ranging from Reliance Industries to Tata Motors to Hindustan Unilevers. Dr. Mashelkar served as a member of Science Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, set up by successive Indian governments over 3 decades. He chaired 16 Mashelkar committees. This is also a popular thing, 16 Mashelkar committees set up by the government dealing with complex national challenges. Thank you so much, sir, for agreeing to spend some time with us this evening. I will also take one moment to introduce my esteemed colleague, Professor R. Prasad. He is the Senior Director at the Academic Wing of ICFAI Group. He brings with himself 3 decades of rich experience. He was an entrepreneur and now he's a revered academic. Professor Prasad, welcome and thank you for joining. I'll now stop sharing the screen. We will save all the time, conserve all the time to hear from Mashelkar sir. Sir, it's over to you. We are extremely delighted and thankful to have you with us this evening. Thank you and kindly start the session.
So thank you very much, Professor Sudhakar, for that wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure and a privilege. Once again, I remember giving the Foundation Day lecture on 13 February, and within a month, again, I'm with this very prestigious institution. Thank you for this opportunity. What I'm going to do in the 20 minutes that I have with you is to give you an idea about the journey of my life, what I have learned from that. And we are talking about transformational science leadership. I remember coming back to India in 1976, and Mrs. Gandhi had sent the then Director General of CSIR to around the world to look for talent and get it back because she was tired of the bureaucracy in terms of when wonderful scientists returned, they wouldn't get a job and they would go back. And I remember meeting Professor Naiduma in a London hotel. And I think from my heart and not from my head. So when he offered me sort of job and say, please come back, I was barely 32. I said, I will come. And I joined this National Chemical Laboratory, which is a premier laboratory. And you can see its purpose. It says that the purpose of this laboratory is to advance knowledge and to apply chemical science for the good of the people. Very simply put, but it's an extremely powerful statement. I did science as well as science leadership. In terms of science, engineering science, we don't get Nobel Prize, but the highest award that we get is what is called as Fellowship of Royal Society. And there have been only 3 Indian engineering scientists that have been elected in 360 odd years. And I was lucky to have this particular honor. And what I want to show you in particular is I'm signing in the book that Newton has signed, and we sign it in the same way that he did, with ink and so on and so forth. And it's a special honor to be signing in that book, I must say. So that was the science part of it. I will not get into the detail of what science I did. But this lecture is all about science leadership, institution leadership. So I'll quickly move to the leadership. Now, when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about almost 45 years of journey in terms of leadership. First, the Chemical Engineering Division, then the National Chemical Laboratory, then the Director General of CSIR, and then several other institutions. So how do you summarize that 45 years of journey in just few sentences? I would say I would summarize them into 3 lessons. The first is aspirational pole vaulting leadership, because aspirations are our possibilities, and the leader must ensure that the aspirations must be kept very high. The second is compassionate, inclusive leadership. There is innovation, there is passion, but most important is compassion. And the third is what I like to call as conviction leadership, and I'll explain that as we move along. Let us start with the aspirational leadership. This is a photograph. I took over as the director of NCL at 9 o'clock in the morning on 1st June. And at 11 o'clock, I addressed all the 1,100 people, in an auditorium of 540 people. Now, I had a challenge at that time. In 1989, India was not an open economy. It liberalized, opened up only in 1991. So what we were doing as scientists was copying, reverse engineering, import substituting, and so on. But anytime we had something which was ahead of the rest of the world and we went to industry, they would say, but have they done it? They means Japan, US, Europe. They didn't have the confidence. So on the very first day, I said, let National Chemical Laboratory be International Chemical Laboratory. What am I selling? Knowledge. What is my market? The whole world, not necessarily India or Indian industry. Now, that was quite a daring, because I was saying we license our patents to the rest of the world. And when we had a dismal record of patenting, in 39 years, we did not have a single US patent. And here I was saying that we will do that. And I was doing it because of the people that you see in front of me. I had tremendous faith in my scientists that they will be able to actually do that. And I sent a strong message that it's not the power of the budget, but the power of idea that matters. And also changing the paradigm, not publish or perish, but patent, publish, and prosper. Because patent is an instrument by which you connect Saraswati with Lakshmi, you create wealth, and we were very poor in that. So it was a dramatic change in the way we would do it. And did we do it? Yes. If you can see, NCS 3 US patents on polycarbonate were licensed to General Electric for around $1 million, first ever reverse transfer of technology from India. Same people were doing copying, managed to do that. And remember, in polycarbonate, General Electric was the leader in the world. Can you just imagine a laboratory which was just copying, import substituting, being able to do that? And then we had a strategic partnership with them for 10 years, which led to $15 million license fee. And that is considered as a model. And then, of course, we had partnership with others, DuPont, Dow, Procter& and Gamble, and so on. And Jack Welch, the chairman of GE, when he came to know how splendidly we were doing, he said, why are we not there if they're so good? And that is where the Jack Welch R&D Center in Bangalore came, and that triggered India's emergence as a global R&D hub. And today we have more than 1,200 such units. But that was basically the beginning. The prediction that I had made, 1995, I remember this is the Thapar Memorial Lecture that I gave. And in confident tone, I had said India will emerge as a global R&D platform. And you know who chaired it? Dr. Manmohan Singh was then the finance minister. And I have the reputation of being a dangerous optimist. So people said this dangerous optimist is selling dreams. But that was not the case. Actually, it happened. In 2016, I have this paper where we are showing how India has emerged as a global R&D hub, and a lot of IP of many of the leading companies gets generated here. So I think the basic issue about leadership is having faith in your people, setting tall targets, believing in them, and supporting them. And in fact, you can see that in year 2002, today we talk about patents, but CSIR was number one, ahead of Samsung, ahead of LG, ahead of UI. We have lost that leadership, unfortunately, today. But what I'm saying is that from nowhere, we could come to the leadership position. I've interacted very closely with industry. As I said, I was on the board of Reliance for 17 years. I chaired the Reliance Innovation Council. And I remember Mukesh Bhai and I used to have conversation at the end of our meetings. And one day I remember Mukesh Bhai mentioning that, Doc, we must leapfrog to something. I said, do you know why the frog leaps? He said, no. I said, he leaps because he's afraid of the predator. He's afraid of the enemy, so he jumps a few feet. Do you want to do that? Or you want to pole vault? Because the size of the pole is the size of your aspiration. He loved it, and we created a program called Beyonders, creating 100 pole vaulting innovation leaders. And we gave them massive opportunities through growth initiatives and teach them the Reliance way of innovation, setting unreasonable goals, challenging conventional wisdom, getting ordinary people to do extraordinary things. They would suffer from divine discontent, nothing will satisfy them, and convert adversity into opportunities. But most importantly, generate exponential value through innovation and leadership. Did we do that? Yes. If you see, for example, pole vaulting to reach 50 million users when Jio came in, telephone took 50 years to have 50 million users. Mobile had 12, YouTube had 4, Facebook 3, Twitter 2, and Reliance Jio did in 83 days. It's incredible. Of course, this Chat GPT has broken this record. That's a different matter. They are in a different domain. And actually, India pole vaulted from 155th position to number one position in mobile data usage. You can see that millions of GB per month. We were here, lower down, and after Jio's entry, how we pole vaulted. And that position we are still held, by the way. That is where the digital public infrastructure of India has been built. And of course, we had this book, Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, which won the Best Business Book of the Year award, because there is a new spirit in terms of moving sort of forward. And one of the great things about leadership is that some of your messages have to become national slogans or a national culture. And this happened. Late General Bipin Rawat, when he read the book, in this conversation with Nitin Gokhale, he said, time has come to move from leapfrogging to pole vault. The three lessons, the second one is compassionate, inclusive leadership. Compassion is extremely important. Like I said, innovation, compassion, and passion. And if you see these, just 11 March, just a few days ago, you can see our launching this Satyarthi movement on global compassion. On your left-hand side, you are the Peace Nobel laureate, Satyarthi, and on the right-hand side, you see Jody Williams, who was also Peace Nobel laureate, and many other leaders. So compassion is actually the key. And I remember, in fact, I started this Gandhian engineering movement, which was the essence of global compassion, in way back in 2008, by the way. And this is a photograph of my giving a talk in the ATSC Innovation Forum lecture, because when I was elected to Australian Academy. And what was the essence of that? The Gandhian engineering essence was the key elements of global compassion. Mahatma Gandhi had said that earth provides enough to satisfy everyone's need, but not every man's greed. So that meant get more from less and less of exhaustible resources. And he had also said, I would prize every invention of science made for the benefit for all, because that is the compassion part of it, for more and more people. So actually the Gandhian engineering was getting more performance from less resources for more and more people. And that became quite popular, because then C.K. Prahlad and I wrote this paper on innovation's holy grail, more from less for more, how businesses can do well by doing good. And this is now ranked among the top 10 must-read papers in innovation. But most interestingly, within few months of our publishing that paper, World Economic Forum had a special sort of conference on that. And I went around. As a matter of fact, I spoke first in Canberra, then in Melbourne. Then I remember in the US, in Washington, World Bank, I spoke, and they created an inclusive innovation program, more from less for more. In Vietnam, for example, I spoke in Asia, in Manila, Asian Development Bank, they started programs. I spoke in Europe, and you can see here Brussels, where the European Commissioner on Innovation had invited me to speak. I spoke to 2,000 Europeans, and they could see the merit of that. I was invited in Beijing, several other places, as you can see, Colombo, Cape Town, Medellin, etc. I think the main point is that this particular message, which is actually global compassion, we talk it now global compassion, went around the world. Then you would say, what did you do yourself? In my mother's name, I created a foundation, Anjani Mashelkar Inclusive Innovation Award Foundation. And this was actually to promote Gandhian engineering. And these have been the award winners. I could take another hour to describe the work that these people have done. It is actually making high technology work for the poor. And all breakthrough sort of kind of research. I'll just take two samples. Take, for example, 2012 awardee, Mishkin Ingawale for Touch HB. What he did was not just to best practice, but move to next practice. The best practice to determine hemoglobin was invasive with needles. Take blood sample. He said, no, don't do that. No needles, not invasive, because he found that rural women were unwilling to give their blood. The cost per test factor of 10 he actually brought down. And you can see that he used actually Touch HB, which is using very high technology. Just put your finger and you know what your hemoglobin is, just for 10 rupees. And then not even a touch, he displaced it with the next practice, where this is a camera. You look into the camera and you know your hemoglobin, by using, again, a high technology. You can just see what difference high technology can make work for the poor. In a village, you just keep a few cameras and hemoglobin is detected by just looking into it. Look at this ECG test for 5 rupees. You will not believe it, but this is Rahul Rastogi, that's my wife, Vaishali, and Professor Anil Gupta, my guru in innovation. So if you see the best practice, many of you or some of you might have taken the ECG, you see the 12 leads that are put. He created a sort of a device which looks like a small smartphone. You put your two fingers just for 15 seconds, and they have a sensor. You put it around your heart, and you have portable ECG. Today, it has gone to 12 countries. 3 million scans have been done. It's an incredible sort of device, portable ECG. Okay. Now, this is the compassionate, inclusive leadership, because inequalities have increased dramatically. Rich have become richer, poor have become poorer. And therefore, whether it is corporate social responsibility, corporate compassionate leadership, or whatever you call it, that's a must for a leader. And the last part is the convex lens leadership. I'll tell you where it comes from. I was born in a very poor family. My father died when I was 6. My brother, who was illiterate, brought me to Mumbai. I walked barefoot until I was 12. I studied under street lights. 2 meals a day was a challenge. My mother brought me up. And at a point in time, I was in a municipal school, Marathi medium, and 7 to 8 standard, I had to go and we required 21 rupees. I was not wearing shoes, so we had to wear shoes, uniform, and all that. And can you believe it? It took 21 days for my mother to collect it from a housemaid who was her friend. It was her collection. And by that time, admissions to good schools were closed. I went to a poor school, but that poor school had rich teachers. And one of the teachers, the science teachers, one day took us out into the sun. He had this convex lens in his hand, and he had a piece of paper. He moved it up and down. And when the brightest spot came, he said, "This is the focal length." And can you believe it? Once he held it for some time, the paper burnt. And then for some reason, he turned to me and he said, "Mashelkar, like this, if you focus, you can achieve anything." That was a wow moment in my life. And I said, I must become a scientist. But later on, I saw more meaning in it. What is the property of parallel lines? They never meet. What does convex lens do? It brings it together. Now you can quite clearly see race, religion, language, they never meet. And a good political leader actually bring them together. Not concave lens leadership which take them apart. At an individual level also, I found that getting the team together, it is teams who sort of describe. And I saw when I took over CSIR, which is a chain of 40 laboratories, they were not talking to each other. I mean, it was incredible. And I remember this 11 May 1998, when we had this sort of conference of all directors. We can see them sign as a team CSR. India matters to us. It is our endeavor that we shall matter to India more. And you can see that when the top 10 achievements of 20th century were listed, you can see from Ramanujan to Saar to C.V. Raman, the last that is recognized is CSR transformation, that transformation among the rate. And then I also got this J.R.D. Tata Corporate Leadership Award. As Sudhakar mentioned, I'm the only scientist to have met it. So, but it is all about convex lens, bringing dissimilar things together. And I did it at a world level as a president of Global Research Alliance, US, South Africa, Australia, Denmark, Germany, getting them aligned to creating a global knowledge pool for global good. I was the president, bringing completely dissimilar countries actually together by that convex lens leadership. And finally, public-private partnership program, for example, we had a new Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative that became India's biggest public-private partnership. I think the most important is the diagram that you see, because India had operated where technology was certain, markets were certain, you could just copy. We made a paradigm shift by taking them to an area where markets were uncertain and technologies were uncertain. And they were all grand challenge driven. And you can see the effect. This program gave India the first indigenous hydrogen fuel cell bus, which is better than the state of the art, as you can see, because it is around $400 per kilowatt compared to $1,000. And our Honorable Prime Minister, just a few days ago, launched India's first hydrogen-powered ferry built at Cochin shipyard. And this is going to transform our waterways, by the way, in making them the way ferries and other sort of vehicles that are used being completely hydrogen-free. So that was the power of that. So some strong messaging is the key to transformative leadership. I like to end by saying that patent, publish, and prosper. You have to give a strong message and then everybody turns around. So a laboratory like NCL, this message was given, how they became leaders in patenting. Innovation, compassion, and passion. I remember CSIR South Africa. I was the chairman of the review committee after Nelson Mandela came. And they were talking about innovation and passion, but not compassion for the left out blacks. I gave that sort of mission, and that became actually the headline for our report and their subsequent work. Expansion, inclusion, and excellence was key that has been sort of mentioned by the former president Pratibha Patil when we were trying to expand by including the excluded. Democracy, diversity, demography. You might have heard this from the Prime Minister in his speech, but it was my address to the management students almost 20 years ago, where this was mentioned because these are India's strengths. Talent, technology, and trust, the very critical part. And finally, more from less for more, as you heard. The point I'm trying to make is that whether it was nationally or internationally, summarizing what you want to do in three powerful words, strong messaging, is a highlight of good leadership. I've taken these leadership lessons to different countries that you see here as a senior World Bank consultant, and also to the corporate world by chairing many of these. And of course, for Microsoft External Research Board, I was a member, and Michelin Corporate Innovation Board, I was a Michelin. So I'll end by talking about 5 Mashelkar mantras that I learned. First, aspirations are your possibilities, keep them high. But but for our CSIR, our society, our beloved nation. And I demonstrated to you how National Chemical Laboratory became International Chemical Laboratory. Second is like instant coffee, no instant success. We have to work hard. The purpose, perseverance, passion, too early to quit. Winners are never quitters, quitters are never winners. And I always tell young people, fail, don't get deterred. It is only the first attempt in learning. And I also say that when doors of opportunity that you keep on knocking don't open, create your own doors. And my life is full of such sort of stories. And finally, no limit to human endurance, achievement, imagination, excepting the ones you put on your mind. You know, I remember that when I got FRS, I called Professor C.N.R. Rao, Bharat Ratna, and he said, not bad. And I was very disappointed because it's a very high honor. And then I got other honors and kept on saying, not bad. And then one day I got really upset with him. I said, what do I have to do to impress you? And the message that he gave was very important. You know, the message that he gave was, you are climbing on a ladder of excellence, which is limitless. And the only limit is what you put on yourself. And I must say that what it means is that no matter what you achieve, you have to say, my best is yet to come. So my suggestion is that good leaders convey this message to everyone, that your best is yet to come. And every day in the morning, if you say that my best is yet to come and today will be the day, you can see how your institution, your organization, your society, your nation will be absolutely at the top of the ladder of excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This is, I think, the entire journey of your life, your work, your accomplishments, contribution, message, everything you captured in a very, very short span of time. I'm sure it is very, very difficult for anyone to actually go deep into this at such a short span of time that's available to us. I'm sure we will go to your website and read more about it, definitely. But, sir, the message for the evening that you have given us is that true leaders will be transformational if they walk the talk and then distill lessons from the practices. I think here is no theory, here is only action, and subsequently it's been messaged in a manner that it appealed to people at scale. I think that's the beauty of the entire journey of your life. We are highly fortunate to have had your session this evening. There are tons of messages in this and several bullet points that we have jotted down. As I said, we should go back to your website and read the entire journey in its detail. And that's the true sense of appreciating the difficulties in the journey and the highlights in the journey, and thereby, imbibing some of the lessons from that journey. The book Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting is with me. Experiment is with me. Yes, that book, a copy is with me. I'm sure we will have this in our library as well. I would very, very strongly, I have read that book, sir. I would strongly urge everyone around the screen to read that book, and you will be in a better position to understand what we are trying to attempt this evening. Thank you so much, sir. In the interest of time, what I will do is we will quickly go down to the Q&A session. The Q&A session will be in 2 clusters. Professor Prasad will start the first cluster. He will take a couple of questions and I will come back for the second cluster of questions. After moderating a few questions there, in case we have to open the mic for the audience, I will do that and definitely will moderate that interaction as well. So quickly, I request Professor Prasad. Over to you. Thank you very much, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, sir, for such a inspiring journey that you have highlighted through these introductory remarks. I think there's a lot that the country can learn, leaders around in the world of science can learn quite a lot, and I think we need to do a lot of work first to understand. So to begin and come to the first question straight away, you have traveled a very unique way, a very long way. Now, how have you kept your mission orientation till day? This is a challenge that every leader faces.
Yes, I think that's a very important question. I'm 82 at the moment and I'm working harder than I did in my 20s. And many people ask me that. So I think the first thing I tell people is that you must do what you love and you must love what you do. As long as you continue to do that, I think it makes sort of a huge difference. The second point is the purpose, perseverance, and passion part that I talked about. Because in perseverance, what happens is the winners are never quitters, quitters are never winners. So therefore, you will fail as you sort of move along. But you have to take failure in its stride. And as I said, failure is only first attempt in learning. Your best guru is your last mistake, as long as you don't repeat it. For example, Chandrayaan-3, we all celebrated because its success. But it succeeded because Chandrayaan-2 had failed. And they learned all the lessons from Chandrayaan-2. And they did not repeat that particular sort of mistake. So I think that is very important. The fourth point is parachute works best when it is open. Mind is also like that. It works best when it is open, And it is very important to keep your mind open, and you never know where you will get the inspiration from and how you will use it. So one of the things about good leaders is that they are great listeners, basically, not talkers. Not only that, they see big meaning even in small things. Let me tell you a little story just to illustrate that. I remember my granddaughter Ishwari, when she was 5 or 6. In the morning, I would be reading a newspaper and she would be fooling around. And she was learning alphabets. So I took a piece of paper and said, I will test your sort of alphabets. So I wrote A, and she was sitting on this side, by the way, on the left-hand side. I wrote A, she said A. I wrote D, she said D. Then I wrote Z, like this, and she said N. I said, no, beta, it is Z. She said, no, Abba, it is N. Because the way she was looking at it was N, and the way I was looking at it was Z. Both of us were right. What did it tell me? It told me, and this is something very important in leadership, that seemingly two people can be right depending upon the way they look at things. And I picked it up, by the way, and it helped me in leadership, by the way. I remember Microsoft and an Indian company, I will not name it, they got into trouble with each other. And I remember the things went so bad that the CEO of that company, Indian company, went to jail, And then finally they had to mediate. And Narayan Murthy, myself, and Anu Aga were chosen as 3 mediators. And finally, for some reason, they chose me. And I remember the Microsoft team came, their team came, we sat down, okay? And I narrated this story, ZNN, to them. And I said, seemingly both of you can be right. I told the Indian company, look, Microsoft as a multinational has its own rules, regulations, obligations, the way they operate. And I told them the vulnerability of the Indian company, and so on. So I said, if each one of you do the ZNN, look at it from yourself. And then after half an hour, I left. Do you know what happened? After 3 or 4 hours, I got a call saying that we have settled the dispute. You know why? Because they said whenever things were falling apart, we said, what did Dr. Mashelkar said? ZNN. Look at it from each other's point of view. And later on, as I said, I was Microsoft External Research Advisory Board member. And I found that ZNN story had gone sort of there. I think what is the simple point I'm making? When I sat with my granddaughter and that particular experience, I could have just forgotten about it. There is nothing in it. But it had such a big meaning. Today, world's conflicts are simply because of ZNN. Why is Ukraine happening? Why is Gaza happening? You understand the ability to listen. We have lost that listening power. We have lost that observation power. So I would simply say answer to your question is this continuous mission orientation is through keeping that focus, which is a lesson that my guru had given me when I was very young with an open mind.
Excellent, sir. I think there's much more to it, but we don't have time. And we have taken what you have said. And I think one of the most important points is about the perspective, the Z and the end in that. And the fact that this has so well been understood by so many other leaders across, the simplicity of the idea and your ability to pick up an idea, whoever it may be, somebody small or whoever it may be. I think these are the points which are coming across, sir. So the next query is that you worked with a lot of scientists. Now, how do you get them to be curious? Because not just in the scientist domain, even the education domain, where people are required to do research which has impact. How do you get them to be curious over and over time?
That's a very important question because, as Einstein said, I'm an ordinary human being. The only thing that distinguishes me is curiosity. You know, wanting to know, wanting to learn, and so on and so forth. I think that curiosity part has to start from the school. Innovation has to start from the school. You cannot just pick up a 26-year-old and tell you, hey, from tomorrow you will be innovative. It can't be. It has to be built in. And therefore, it goes back to our educational system. Not learning by rote, but learning by doing. Not learning by doing, by following what the steps the teacher has talked about, but learning by creating. And not learning by creating, but learning by co-creating. That is the way education systems have to move. Then the ability to relate the unrelatable, that is the crux of my book, this exponential improvement by converging parallels. The power to observe and use. For example, converging parallels is impossible, as we saw, okay? But if you relate the unrelated, so as to say, by your keen observation and curiosity, you can make a difference. For example, we cite here how the sort of unobvious connection is more powerful than the obvious one. Okay, but we have to observe. For example, Henry Ford, when he started car making, you know, they were very expensive. It used to take 12 hours for assembling one car. From 12 hours, he went to 1 hour. And the price was reduced by a factor of 10. How did he do that? By not going to an auto expert. He was visiting an animal slaughterhouse and he saw that the workers did not come to the cut part of the animal, the meat packaging factory, but the cut part went actually to the worker, you know, by a conveyor belt. That is where he got the idea of assembly line. And that is where the time for assembly came down by a factor of 10, prices came down by a factor of 10. Now, what is common between these two? There is nothing that is common between an auto manufacturing and a sort of animal slaughterhouse. Similarly, F1 formula, the car breaks down, I mean, there is a tire replacement, it is done in 15 seconds, I mean, 5 seconds. Okay. Then our factory toothpaste manufacturing in that business said, why do I take 2 hours to change my brand A to brand B on my assembly line? Why can't I use some of those techniques? And can you imagine, they started producing 1 million sort of tubes without any extra capital or operational expenditure, you know. So I think it is observation, analysis, and synthesis, but observing in a particular sort of way, that is the issue. And always continuously questioning, because new science gets evolved only when you challenge the old. Like if Einstein had not challenged Newton, we would not have had sort of the breakthrough that we had. I think that is very important because our system is so hierarchical that sir becomes yes, sir, you know. You heard this General Electric R&D Center coming up here. Do you know the story about that? The story is that because NCL had this partnership with them, they started consulting me, in terms of setting their R&D center. And the scientists, basically, they had to hire. The first condition I said is that you must get those in America back here. Okay, reverse brain drain. That was my selfish interest. The second one was, I said, when you hire Indian scientists, they are used to saying yes, sir. Sir becomes yes, sir. First, drop that. Change the culture so that they can call you John or Henry or whatever sort of it is. Because the moment you say yes, sir, you are confined yourself by not challenging any idea. You get the point. So there has to be a cultural shift in the organization. There has to be a good smell in the organization where a contrarian view is welcome, so as to say. That is the open mind part that I talked about. That is how the curiosity, critical thinking, they are and cognitive flexibility are the key sort of three factors sort of which allow you to move forward.
Thank you, sir, for giving us some specific inputs on how to develop curiosity. I'll take a third question, sir. And this is about there are a lot of people still getting into engineering and may not be focusing on science. Now, how do you create a scientist, right from the fact that we need people who do more of science to, including the education part of it, to getting them interested in becoming a scientist? How do you do this, sir?
Yes, I think it's very, very important. I told you that when this teacher showed to me an experiment where you take a piece of a glass, hold a paper and it burns. I said, my God, science is so powerful, I must become a scientist. You have to ignite the curiosity of the sort of children. You have to explain to them. For example, when I talk to children, I tell them 2020 is considered as a year of pandemic. I say, no, it was year of science, Indian science. Because when COVID hit us, we did not have diagnostic, we did not have therapeutics, we did not have vaccines, we did not have personal protection equipment. And within 1 year, we had all of them. And we started exporting. And then I tell them, you were saved, your parents were saved, simply because there were scientists and we had invested in science. So what you have to do is make science interesting for them. In fact, my Indian Science Congress presidential lecture has this particular point when I talk about child-centered education on how you can make it interesting for them in the learning phase with this curiosity, challenging the obvious, looking at nature, developing questioning attitude. Basically, this is I think this is fundamental. I understand Edwin Land, for example, who did this Polaroid instant camera. He had taken his daughter for a holiday and he was photographing her by the old cameras. And the old cameras, because they were film-based and processed, so after a week, you will see the photograph. She said, Daddy, can I see it now? Okay. And he said, why not? He had an open mind. And he went, and in a couple of years' time, the instant photography, the Polaroid, etc. came. Supposing this was asked to an Indian parent, what he might have said is that, shut up, don't ask such silly questions. Nobody has done it. That's not the issue. The fact that nobody has done it means all the more why we should be able to do it. You understand? So I think the simple answer to your question is the beauty of science and science making a difference is very, very important. It's same thing about engineering, by the way. I'm on this jury of Queen Elizabeth Prize of Engineering, which is a kind of a Nobel Prize in engineering. And the first one went to internet, the Tim Berners-Lee, World Wide Web, GPS, etc., etc. And I remember when I got on the jury, say 6, 7 years ago. They asked me which branch of engineering would be most powerful. I said, not chemical engineering, not metallurgical engineering, not aeronautical engineering. It's going to be solution engineering, number one. Given a problem, how do you form a solution? That's the job engineer does. But most importantly, the moment you say to an engineer, you will build road or you will build bridges, they get bored. They say, I don't want to be. I said, what you should be telling them is that you are a bridge builder between science and society. The benefits of science, the results of science, you take to the society, and they can't be taken without an engineer. Then the job becomes exciting. So it's a question of communication. It's a question of relating it to sort of real life. It's a question of messaging, as I kept on saying, and you will see the difference. I have experienced that in my life, so I can share that with you.
Excellent, sir. You have highlighted some aspects. First is about making it interesting, which I think is true not just for science, but any other stream, very important in science given where we are today. And the other is, I think you also indirectly referred to some cultural issues amongst Indians and their parents about how they go about their education. You have highlighted solution engineering, the ability to think and ask the right questions, to think about the solutions rather than just parts of it or something which is not so interesting. And I think the most important point is that one must know how to message whatever one wants to do. Thank you very much, sir. We are at about 7:19. I hand it back to Professor Rao.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, sir. It's very interesting. The conversation is going on very, very nicely. I thought I'll also take this opportunity to ask a few questions, and then we'll see if time permits, and if you permit, we'll open the mic for the audience as well. So the first question is, in your very, very impressive journey of life, where there have been several accomplishments, several difficulties also, I'm sure they are there. But for the sake of this conversation, you have highlighted some accomplishments. Sir, if you were to just look back and see, what are the couple of challenges in your lifetime that you have encountered, and how did you overcome those challenges? If you can list a couple of them, it'll be a great lesson for us to learn from.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, because I've given one side of the story basically, but there have been challenges. You know, what happened was that there, as you mentioned, there were 16 Mashelkar committees. Okay. And in fact, there was a saying in the government that when in difficulty, form a Mashelkar committee. You understand? And I've chaired all sorts of committees, a national auto fuel policy, for example, or changing the drug regulatory systems, getting rid of spurious drugs, environmental issues, educational issues. In fact, my baptism was by fire when I was barely 42, and when the Bhopal disaster took place. 2,600 people died overnight. You remember that? And I was on the accident tank within 3 days. What to do with the other tank which was carrying methyl isocyanate? And then they made me the technical assessor for the inquiry commission. It was a huge job, looking at that. So my baptism by fire is something I've seen. I've had difficulties, because what happens that any issue that comes up, there are always two sides, which have contrarian views to each other. Take, for example, national auto fuel policy. Okay. Now, we wanted to, the Delhi was a big challenge at that time, if you remember the Delhi pollution. And therefore, the auto pollution had to be looked at, and they made me the chairman. And remember, the challenge was that to get cleaner fuels would take time. For example, just to illustrate, sulfur had to be reduced from 500 parts per million to, let's say, 50 parts per million. That is a hydrodesulfurization process. And for India's needs, we had to put some 60,000-70,000 crore to create our own hydrodesulfurization plants. Otherwise, we would be importing. And we didn't have dollars to import. But that would take 4 to 5 years. Or there were, at that time, we were at Euro 2, and we had to move from Euro 3 to Euro 4. Okay. And for moving to Euro 4, for example, you require Euro 4 quality engines. So I visited the auto companies and said how much time you will take, because you can't snap your finger. But NGOs wanted us to do that, snap your finger. So I remember my getting hammered in Times of India, I was on the front page every day, every day. And they would not say Mashelkar committee. They would say Mashelkar. I was accused of being sold to auto companies, on being sold to oil companies and all sorts of things for 7 days. And on the 8th day, it was a Sunday, they put me inside the cover and say, give my photograph and say, most harassed man of the week. Now you can just imagine what I must have gone through at that time. But then you sit down and tell yourself, there is nothing personal about it. You're doing what is good for the nation, so as to say. As luck would have it, the NGOs accused me that I was too soft and gave them long leeway. We should have done it within a year. We should have come to Euro 4. Do you know, actually, I had given a sort of a roadmap and saying by this time you should achieve this. The government could not even achieve that. What the NGOs had considered was very liberal and very loose, guarding the interests of the companies. Even that could not be implemented. It was even what I had given was tough. Okay, and it took more time. But nobody then wrote about it, that I was right. You understand? So I think that what I like to call as resilience, is very, very important. Individual sort of resilience. Individual resilience being your adaptability, your agility, your resilient thinking, autonomous innovation, etc. These are qualities that you must have. Like Nelson Mandela, he never broke down despite 28 years in jail, when he came out. The individual level, institutional level, at a national level, when crisis basically took place. I think that is very, very critical. I think that's a short answer to your question.
No, amazing, sir. Amazing example that you have given. In the face of adversity, like external criticism, although you have ventured out to do something good for the country and the government of India has asked you to do it through the committee that is set up. But then intermittent criticism has come from civil society members, and therefore it's an everyday trouble. It's an everyday bragging that. So, as you rightly mentioned, resilience is what we'll have to practice and think about and become very, very tough. Those individuals who are tough in their mind can only exhibit this kind of leadership and stand their ground and ultimately achieve their objective. Yes, many others in your place probably would have withered out and probably have gone back to the government and say that things are not working out. I think, yes, this is a fantastic example of a challenge and how did you overcome by displaying resilience. And resilience is the quality of a true leader. And the purpose of WiseViews leadership conversations is to distill such important lessons from distinguished individuals like you who have been kind enough to speak to us and our audience and share their stories. Wonderful, sir. The stories are very, very impactful. The stories are going on in a very interesting manner. You want to say something, sir?
No, I just want to say, because there are a lot of leaders, I also talked about resilient thinking. What is resilient thinking? I'll give you an example. As I said, I've been on the board of Reliance for 17 years. Dhirubhai Ambani, when he started his sort of refineries in Jamnagar, now, as you know, it is one of the largest single location refining complex in the world today. But when he started, he, as usual, had the consultants, the McKinseys of this world and so on. And then he was asked by the consultant, for what crude specification would you like the refinery to be built? And you know what was his response? His response was, for all specifications, from dirtiest to the finest. Then they said, there is no such refinery in the world. He said, but there is always a first time. I like to build it. Do you know how many types of crudes today Reliance processes? 230. There is no such refinery anywhere in the world which does that. And what is the effect of that? No matter what happens in the world, okay, ups and downs, their margins are the highest. This I like to call as a resilient thinking, resilient design, and so on and so forth. That requires guts, of course. It requires courage. And particularly in the morning, I remember having a conversation because somebody was consulting me on creating a new partnership with a very top universities in the world on doing something in a completely different way. And one of the members kept on asking me, but has it been done before? I said, no, but that is your opportunity. This is our mindset. इसने किया नहीं तो हम कैसे करेंगे? you should see that as an opportunity of being the first, basically, So I think it's an issue of mindset. It's an issue of trust. It's an issue of confidence. Like I made a promise that I will license my US patents to the best in the world when we had 0 US patents, because I had a trust and confidence. So that when I say talent, technology, and trust, it is that part of it, basically, trusting yourself. Bill Gates and I met sort of recently in the Ambani marriage, I remember. And I was recalling because I remember his sort of conversation with me when there was a meeting that was organized by Ravi Venkatesan. I think Nandan Nilekani was there, Arun Maira was there, and people like that. And I remember this fellow saying, our Bill Gates saying that when in Harvard University, they had asked him to do the commencement lecture. And he declared himself as the sort of most successful dropout in the world, which is correct. And then he narrated an experience, which is, I think our leaders are listening. This is very important. You know what he said? He said, when I was very young, I phoned up, at that time, computer hardware was being built. Okay. And in that, he said that if they're building hardware, they require software. So he called them and said, I will give you the software. And he said, I was afraid that they will keep the phone down, because then 18, 19-year-old saying, in those early days, I will give the software. You know what the company said? The company said, we are not ready as yet, come after a month. And you know what he said to us? Thank God they said, come after a month, because I did not have the software that I was offering. So that company had a trust in that young man, and that young man had a trust in himself. Both are very important. So we have great talent, we have great technology. It is the trust. In fact, trust deficit will not take us sort of anywhere. I want to make particularly a strong statement. We are a great nation. I think we have to have that confidence.
Amazing, sir. Amazing. Thank you very much once again for citing this example of in spite of having talent and technology, we need to have a trust in our team and also on others and self, so that we catapult to an opportunity that is out there, lying out there, but we grab that opportunity. And there's always first time to do things. I think that's the mark of a resilient thinking mind or mindset that you have explained. Thank you so much, sir. We'll move to the next question with your permission. And that is, this is a slightly different kind of question. There's a participant who's trying to understand a little bit about Indian farming community while transforming to what kind of handholding is required by Indian farming community while transforming to natural farming. Any lessons from there or any suggestions he's seeking from you, sir?
Yes, of course. If there is one area where they don't require handholding, it is natural farming, to be honest. Because
Okay.
because this has been our tradition, to be honest. Even before fertilizers came in 1934, that breakthrough, the ammonia sort of breakthrough, we were doing, I think, how did we all sort of survive? I think what is very important to realize is the extent, we have to feed how many people today, 1.4 billion, but as we go ahead, 1.5, 1.6 billion people. And we have to look at their food requirements. Okay. And therefore, it is not this or that. That means all natural farming cannot produce that. I can tell you that. All right. Natural fertilizers will not be able to do that. So it has to be a balanced mix. It is not this or that. We normally take positions, isko band karo. That cannot be. So how do we move that, and what is the roadmap is what we have to sort of assume. As far as the best practices in that are concerned, they are actually growing. I was just recently in Sawantwadi. They gave me some sort of special honor, and they took me to a field where it was all natural farming. But when I deep dived into it, basically, and it could be done, by the way, and they become premium products also, just as green, whatever is stamped as green in terms of process use, this becomes, etc. But if you deep dive into it, That's a collective, cooperative sort of effort by everybody backing it up, so as to say. You can't do it alone. In fact, I talked to the farming community. So I think the future is going to be the following. The future is going to be not ammonia and then ammonical fertilizer, but green ammonia.
Okay.
You understand? Because the Haber-Bosch process is a polluting one which produces current ammonia. So you will have to go to green hydrogen. And green hydrogen comes by water splitting, so as to say, only hydrogen and oxygen. That is what is going to be the future. So how do we move toward that green part of it is what we have to say. And nature will be always a sort of a guide, whether it is pesticides, whether it is insecticides, etc. The point I'm trying to make is that the kind of demand on food that we are going to have cannot all be met by natural farming. Let me be very frank. It will sound very interesting if I say, yes, that's the way to go. But I will not do that because scientists have to always speak the truth and the reality.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Our demands are huge and all that cannot be attained by only natural farming. And we need to have a balance of our approach. And we have to keep in mind how green we can go by innovating and joining hands, converging our technologies and our minds together. Thank you, sir. I have one more question before I take a question from a member of the audience who's raising his hand. And this is about your grassroots innovations at NIF. How did you come up with the idea of grassroots innovation and where did you scout these and what did you do at NIF? This is the question.
Yes, that's a very important question. There I give the full credit to Professor Anil Gupta, who is my guru. He's the one. I call him modern Gandhi. He just like Gandhiji did Padayatra, he does Shodhayatra. That means every village he goes and finds what innovation they have done. So I think the basic principle is the following. The basic principle is that everyone is someone. The basic principle is that minds on the margin are not marginal minds. Each one of us, you don't require to be a PhD in science in order to generate ideas. Even a farmer, an artisan, a school dropout can generate ideas. So this is innovation by the people for the people. Because when they see a problem, they want to be a part of a solution, not part of a problem. Okay? And that is where this movement was started. I was the chairman of this National Innovation Foundation for 18 years. And Professor Anil Gupta, the vice chair, but he was the guru. He was the leading the whole movement. So what does it do? What it does is that there are people who are unaided. They don't get funding from the government or anywhere. But on their own, they will put money from their own pocket to create sort of solutions. And that is across all age groups, by the way. We have had an 80-year-old man actually creating something which was a kind of cycle which could be operated on water, for example, just because his wife was stuck at the other end and he innovated it, Saifullah. On the other hand, we had 18 years old and 8 years old also who have done things. For example, there was this girl called Remya in Kerala. Her challenge was that her father was down with cancer and her mother was perennially ill. She had to change 3 buses and come back and study as well as wash clothes. Now she could either study or wash clothes. You know what she did? She started studying while she was washing clothes. How? She created a pedal generated, by legs, sort of a rotating, sort of cylinder-based washing machine, and so she could read as well as kind of wash clothes. And then we took it up and talked about connected with the formal National Institute of Design and others to get a better design. And that's a rural washing machine, low cost. Or there was a girl, this Shalini, 13-year-old in Bihar. She saw that her grandfather had difficulty in her walker, in climbing steps and so on and so forth. So she had this front-loaded spring the two legs, the front loaded with spring, so that they can move on the steps and so on. Can you just imagine today, more than 10,000 of them are being produced every year, and she gets actually royalty, which is more than what her poor father earns. 13-year-old. You understand? So therefore, the grassroots innovation is all about people's innovation for solving their sort of own problems. And that's a big, big movement. And I give full credit and really bow my head, Professor Anil Gupta. He has been actually a phenomenon, I would say, who launched this grassroots innovation.
Great, sir. Very interesting examples you have given. And also, the lesson that we carry from here is that ideas can come from anywhere. Ideas can come from anywhere is a philosophy with which one has to operate as a leader, so that we are very inclusive in at least gathering ideas. And the examples that you have shared are phenomenal examples, actually, impacting large number of people, very, very inclusive kind of innovations. And they look like very simple, but
Yeah.
they're made simple.
Yeah, but let me add to that.
Yeah.
Let me add to that, because what happens, this is all physical, but in the digital world, what we can do is amazing. I'll tell you, Professor Brahmachari, who took over from me as a DG CSIR, I'll tell you, in terms of IQ and ideas, he was 10 times better than me, honestly. Amazing fellow. So what he did was what was called as a open source drug discovery, because normally drug discovery takes place in the secluded laboratories of multinationals, right? And very expensive. What he did was that he used Web 2.0 and created a system by which anybody from around the world could participate, basically, So there were something like 131 countries who participated, 7,600 participants, in creating an entirely new drug molecule on tuberculosis. So this was kind of open source where you get the talent from 131 countries. But most importantly, Sudhakar, there was 40% of them were students.
Great.
Now, would you have ever imagined that students can participate in drug discovery? Because we think drug discovery is done by PhDs. That is the point. So I give you a simple example in the physical world, but I'm giving you an example in the digital world. He was a pioneer in this sort of. So I think we have to expand our vision on incorporating sort of this thing. I think at Reliance, for example, I remember, because I've been the chairman of the Innovation Council with kind of Nobel laureates, including C.K. Prasad. I remember 2008, when the economic meltdown happened. Mukesh doesn't believe in putting one bulb off and second bulb off. He puts the whole switch off, basically. And he said that let's launch a movement where everybody participates, because the challenge is not that of the top management, it is for everyone to contribute. And then people said, oh my God, Reliance is hierarchical, ideas come only from the top and so on and so forth. We proved it wrong. We created such platforms basically on getting ideas from all across, as a matter of fact. And it is amazing. We created awards, for example, for values, because those ideas, we had a platform by which they could be quickly assessed, converted, and taken to logical conclusion. In fact, they were so innovative. That platform itself is so innovative, it has been given a patent, basically, just about 6 months ago. Now, the basic point I'm trying to make is that we made a behavioral change. The behavioral change was that everybody, sales guy will only think of sales. Okay. Manufacturing guy will only think of manufacturing. R&D guy will only think of R. So we created awards, and one of them was Karna Award, because Karna was Danshu. He had a big heart. So he would not just think about himself, but of others. So sales or marketing guy thinking about manufacturing, we started giving them sort of the award. And it was an incredible experience in terms of thousands of ideas flowing from all across, so as to say. So I think a good leader, gets the power of everyone. That's why you saw in the leadership criteria, one of the things we said was that getting extraordinary things done by extraordinary people is very easy, but getting extraordinary things done by ordinary people is very difficult. And a good leader actually do that. And there are many instruments of this kind from my book of life I can mention to, just expanding that point about the power
Great,
of.
great. The power of transformational leadership is visible in all these aspects. Some of the examples that you've given are so stellar. The open drug discovery example that you've given is a phenomenal thing for anyone to actually start practicing. And this is a template. There are many ways in our own specific domains we can implement these things. Basically, trying to find that ideas or suggestions or creativity is not location agnostic or organization agnostic or specific to any one particular individual or a team. The moment you crowdsource these ideas and create a platform where everyone can participate and we collectively co-create these things, this is like bringing a theory alive in real life, in our day-to-day practices, and then creating something for the world to share from. So very, very interesting, sir.
And just one point I wanted to add, because in the title of my talk, you have used the word transformational. That's very important. I want to re-emphasize that. When a caterpillar gets transformed into a butterfly, that's transformation. Because the new version of the same species looks completely different. So many times people make a mistake. Like, for example, when we talk about digital transformation, it is not digitization. Digitization is like making a caterpillar a faster caterpillar without changing. That is not the issue. The caterpillar has to be transformed into a butterfly, a complete new species, like National Chemical Laboratory, which was copying, reverse engineering, import substituting. Certainly becomes one which is providing knowledge and licensing patents and the rest of it to the rest of the world. So the new NCL 2.0 has no resemblance with NCL 1.0. You understand? I think that's what leadership must understand. It is not making a little bit of a part faster. It's a total transformation, which requires technological innovation, business model innovation, system delivery innovation, workflow innovation, social innovation, policy innovation. It's a combination of that which does the transformation.
Amazing, amazing. And while doing all these things, you keep that overriding, overarching concept of making it inclusive, making it impactful to the society that we come from. I
Absolutely.
think that is something phenomenal again to add one kind of positive tangent to this leadership style. Great, sir. Awesome, awesome points. I think we become forgetful of time when we are talking to you. I'll quickly come back and I'll request Dr. Shantanu Roy, who wants to have a word with you. Over to Dr. Shantanu Roy.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhakar. And it's great to reconnect with Sir Dr. Mashelkar. I was, just to recollect my old days, I was a scientist in CSIR, that is in NISTARTS in Delhi for 22 years. And I have visited NCL Pune when you were the director there. And I did a case study on chlorosilence. That was published also. Chlorosilence is one of the, I think, technologies we had developed at NCL at those days. And I used to visit in different laboratories for technology management case studies because this was my assignment from CSIR. So a lot of laboratories I had visited and all that. So NCL was one of the laboratories. And I really loved that this experience. But the more important point is when I was a scientist F at NISTARTS before I joined IIT Kharagpur, you were the one because India opened up its plethora of this. 2005 was a landmark year where the patent regime was opened up, and the new patent regime came up. Sir was the leader of Indian this thing enterprise and everything, which at that time he was a DG. So he channelized Indian this thing to file USPTO. The companies were not like patent filing was not there. I used to interact with CII, FICCI, everything. I used to actually physically go to these companies and try to motivate them because I was part of the team from starts. And like he was a leader, like he said, motivate the companies to file for USPTO because if you are growing in a global business and after GATT agreement and all that, and you have to compete with the world. So you cannot only file in Indian patent office, you have to file in USPTO. So awareness about patents and intellectual property he was the person. I really thank you. So when I joined IIT Kharagpur in Vinod Gupta School of Management 2005, I organized a workshop in the Rajiv Gandhi School of Intellectual Property, which is in part of IIT Kharagpur, in collaboration with WIPO on IPR. It's because I still had those connections. So that was like, I can't remember like anything. I mean, it was great. Like my insight into IPR came up when you were the DG. So the movement towards intellectual property, how do you protect your rights? What kind of patents? What kind of design patents? These patents? What is the difference? those days are not today. Today, everybody's filing for patents. Those days, those things were not. So thank you very much. And it's great to see you in person. I don't know whether you remember me because I met you in your chamber at XCL when I went there. A few times I had gone there for different purposes. But yeah, it's great to see you in person. And it's thank you, sir, for joining. It was a great experience for me to come back to those days. I remember 2005, I shifted to academics. I joined IIT Kharagpur in Vinod Gupta School of Management as a faculty. So then I continued as a faculty in operations and technology management and project management and supply chain. But my days in CSIR, I cannot forget. 22 years is not a small number of years.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Thank you. In fact, I think that is a very important point that he made, because when we again talk about transformation, you're doing things which had not been done before. So patenting culture simply didn't exist. In fact, India has had a not such a good history, because 1898, when J.C. Bose had discovered the wireless, the mercury iron core, Sister Nivedita went to him and said, please patent it. And he said, no, it is for some. And what happened? Marconi discovered it much later. And we all think that Marconi discovered it. You understand? That was 1898. In 1998, as you know, I'm also sort of famed for Haldi Ghati ki ladai, that is turmeric patent, and Basmati. 1898, I fought the Basmati patent, because there we would have had thousands of crores of loss, because we would not have been able to export it. Unlike turmeric, which was a sort of matter of principle on which we fought, that you can't do it. Okay. Now, 1898 to 1998 has been the journey from Bose to Basmati. We can't continue like that. And therefore, when I brought in this patenting culture, there was a lot of opposition from the scientists, basically. A lot of, and the awareness, Shantanu, the interesting thing was awareness. I remember Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, 93 or 94, he called me. He said, we are coming, DRDO's 55 lab directors will be there. You come and give an inspiring talk in the beginning. And what would you talk on? He did not ask me whether I will or not. It was given that he asked, I have to do. Then I said, I will say fighting it in the marketplace. He said, what do you mean by that? I said, you get money and nobody can ask you a question on what you're doing because you're working in strategy. For me, after 1991, the tariff walls are going to just collapse. So I'm competing with the best in the world in terms of multinationals who have R&D budgets which are 100 times more on that. So how do I fight in the market? So he loved it. He said, all right. And then while he I had to say some good words. So I said, Mr. Technology of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, respected directors, and so on. And then I talked about patent literacy, how I had started this particular patent movement. And I used the word literacy because literacy is about reading and writing. Okay? You read a patent in such a way you can bypass it, but write it in such a way nobody can bypass you. And that requires special skills. I mentioned that, and then I give some examples on what we're doing. During lunchtime, Dr. Kalam asked me, he said, made a comment. He said, Mashelkar, you have been always so kind, so gracious. You call me Mr. Technology. But do you know, I'm Mr. Patent Illiterate of India. Tell me how important they are for DRDO. And then I explained to him, I said, you can't patent a missile, but you have developed a new sensor system. Then he had a peculiar style. He called somebody, hey, come here, listen to Mashelkar, do whatever he said. And then they established the systems, I went to that. And they went into patenting. You see, so the awareness was very poor. ICR, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, it was the same thing when Mr. Sharad Pawar was the sort of agriculture minister. He had created a committee under my chairmanship with Dr. Vijay Kelkar and others being members. And we brought in that culture, Indian Institute of Science, elsewhere. So it was a big shift. And Shantanu rightly pointed out, 1/1/2005, we had to make that change. And I remember, very interesting, at that time, there was a very enlightened secretary, Rajiv Ratan Shah. because there was a big fight. The NGOs did not just want to change, and there were some political parties which didn't want to change. So he said, Mashelkar, please convince them. We'll get all the warring parties together. You make a presentation. 45-minute presentation I made, and then 45-minute conversation, all this thing. And it went so well. Then he said, we are going to 25 cities. You go there. I said, I'm sorry. I have a day job as DGCSI. I can't go to 25 cities. Then my this thing was recorded, actually, and shown in 25 cities, etc. So at that time, and finally, I'll tell you, I don't mind mentioning this. On the tsunami day, I was in Ahmedabad. At 4 o'clock, I got a call from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. His trust in me was phenomenal. He said, Mashelkar, I'm signing the bill about changing, but I have some tough questions for you before I sign. And he grilled me for 30, 40 minutes. And finally, he said, now I will sign. And he joked also, if anything goes wrong, you are responsible. I mean, he had his sort of usual style. So those were the days we had to convince people that change is good. And this change we have to sort of live up with. We can't just keep on talking about history. Basically, we have to have talk about the real world today, basically.
Right, sir. The journey is fully replete with examples of problem-solving interventions that you have had opportunity to work on. That's amazing. Thank you very much. I'll quickly request Mr. Shivkumar Nayak to raise his question. Over to you, Mr. Shivkumar. While Mr. Shivkumar is opening his mic, I'll take one question, sir. There is a question of comparing India with other countries. So the question goes like this: how far have our socio-economic parameters matched those in other countries which experienced similar economic growth? So this is an attempt to draw your wisdom to compare our country of a similar kind of beginnings and where they have reached and what is happening in our country and what are the advices that we can work on.
Yes, I think when we compare countries, we have to compare similar sizes. There is no use in comparing with small countries, which are of the size of the city of Mumbai or Delhi. We have to compare. And then the only country that comes in is China. I can tell you we are ahead of China at a point in time. Like I showed to you the patent PCT filings. We're number one. UI was number 4. UI is not only number 1 in Asia, in the world today. They have pole vaulted.
Yes.
In 1998, just to give an example, look at supercomputers, high-performance supercomputers. When Param 10,000 came, we were ahead of China, okay? Today, when you look at the top 500 list of high-performance supercomputers, China has more than 200 and we have 4. So we have been left behind. In terms of investments, for example, I remember in 1998, we were 0.68% of GDP. Today, we are still 0.68% of GDP. China is 2.3%, but they are 5 times richer. So they are investing 15 times more. You understand? I think there is this particular challenge. But I'm very happy our Honorable Prime Minister is trying to make an effort. He has created that 50,000 crore fund now for funding research. There is a 1 lakh crore fund. I mean, you have seen that announcement in terms of getting private sector in, etc., etc. I'm seeing some good signs in terms of our moving forward. But raising investments is very critical. Raising investment by private sector is even more critical. Because if you see our total investments, 2/3 of them come from government, 1/3 of them come from industry. When you look at other nations, it is exactly reverse. 2/3 comes from industry and 1/3 comes from the government. Okay. So industry has to buck up. Industry has to invest more because this is not expenditure. This is investment into building the future. So there is a long way to go. I always take pride in India. Like that slogan about diversity, demography, that you saw.
Yes, sir.
That answer, because when people said in what way, because see what happened, I travel around the world. I'm a traveling salesman as far as India is concerned, selling India. And invariably the question will be comparison with China. And I remember saying that the 3 Ds are going to work in our favor. First is democracy, because democracy allows you to think free, act free, so as to say. We are a bit of a chaotic democracy, but that's fine. We are still a democracy. We have one nation. Diversity, okay? From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, there is such a diversity, and diversity increases the power of innovation. And finally, demography, the young people. I mean, we are a young nation, so as to say. And young do not know it cannot be done. Young are able to see what others are not able to see. That's the power you saw. So, people, of course, call me a dangerous optimist, but I will tell you, 29 July, I spoke in San Francisco. There was a GMJ Excellence Summit. I gave the opening talk. And in the opening talk, I had said that building our new India as an exponential inspirator. Okay. And I gave examples after examples on how we are moving exponentially in some ways. Okay. In fact, I likened our country, India, to something of a pond where there are lilies. And the characteristic of those lilies are that they develop every day. And in 30 days, the pond is full. So if you go to the pond on 29, you will see it half full only, right? 28 days, quarter, 27, 1/8. And 26 day, 1/16. That means 6%. 6% full, 94% empty. So you say, "Arey, kya hoga? Kuch nahi hoga." But you go there after 4 days, it is full. And that is why when we talk about startups, 2016, we have only 476 registered startups. 2021, 70,000, exponential. In terms of unicorn, 2016, 1 unicorn per year. In 2021, 1 unicorn per week, So you can see light emitting diodes, for example, which are very important for reducing carbon footprint. We moved from 0.2% to 88% within 7 years. It was a combination of technology and policy. You understand? 5 years, 7 years, 6 years. And you can see the most unbanked country today, actually 46.2% last year, in 2022, in terms of mobile data transactions I'm talking about, I mean, transactions real time. Would you have imagined that almost half of the transactions will take place from India? So lilies in the pond on the 26th day, when you hardly see it empty, but they're doubling up. So we have to keep the exponential going, and that's why I say that inspiration, that faith in ourselves, the faith in our talent, I think is extremely important to build the future. I'm afraid I have another
Yes.
Thank
you, sir. Thank you very much for likening the Indian startup ecosystem to the pond of lilies in its exponential growth that's witnessed all around. We are almost coming to an end, sir, and it's now 8 p.m. We will definitely close it with one question for the road. Is it, I mean, do you believe, because you have worked in this area, you have consulted various companies, both private as well as governments, is it possible to achieve net zero carbon emissions for the world as a family? Even if we come together, is it possible to achieve net zero carbon emissions? Are we realistic in these goals?
In terms of the time scale that we have to talk about.
Yeah.
The time scale that we talk about are difficult. I will be very honest with you. And managing the transition without pain or is going to be a challenge. For example, let us say India, we are dependent on coal. 70% of it comes from coal. Can we close down the coal mines tomorrow? We can't. You understand the number of millions of people who depend upon jobs. So it has to be a gradual transition. And what I like to call is a just transition, just doing justice.
Yeah.
So creating that balance basically is not going to be sort of that easy. But India has shown basically, like that leapfrogging to pole vaulting, the magic that Joe created, for example. You understand, in terms of, nobody would have imagined that.
Yeah.
We were stuck in 2G, 3G, and so on and so forth, etc. We did that. So that was a bold leadership, investment. So I think what will be required is innovation, inclusion, and investment. 1, 2, 3. While you are doing innovation, make sure inclusion is also done, but keep on making investment. 1, 2, 3. That's what I would say is going to be critical.
Great, sir. Great. Thank you so much. As I said sometime back, we tend to get immersive in your conversation and we forget time. And I'm aware of the fact that you have another conference that's going to happen with the US community. Thank you so much, sir, for this valuable time that you have spent with us this evening. This has been amazing. Several lessons that even it is very difficult to summarize now. What we'll do is we'll go back and write a summary and we'll share with you. And once you approve that, we'll upload it on our archives, the text summary. Of course, the video will be kept there for people who can go back and learn from this. So all these sessions are having both videos as well as session summaries on our website. So this is for the individuals who missed those sessions. They can go back, and even those who have attended, they tend to go back and read again. It has got immense value. As much as we have enjoyed talking to you this evening, these lessons along the life of Dr. Mashelkar, your own life and the journey from humble beginnings, you have actually risen in a manner that is exemplar to many young students and many individuals in India and abroad. This is a story which has given us a very, very interesting points for us to take back. For example, resilience, as a matter of fact, one need not labor too much or too hard to bring home this point of resilience. One can actually learn it from the several initiatives that you had taken up in the organizations that you worked with or consulted with. In your own life, you have practiced and have come across several transactions and experiences. These are lessons for us to pick up from. The convex leadership that the way you have coined it, the convex leadership. In simple language, these are hooks in our memory to remember and use it in our own domains, in our own specific journeys. So in summary, what I'm trying to tell you is that, sir, we want to thank you for explaining a little more detail about your life journey. And it's not about history. It is about progress. It's about transformation. It's about inclusive innovation. It's about complete transformational leadership that you have been part of. Several touch points that you mentioned. Through all these, it is likened to, in some way, the growth of this country as well. A lifetime lessons from your journey are mirroring with the way the country has already progressed. I think this is wonderful. We should sit down and draw parallels, draw lessons, and quickly take inputs to implement them in our own office situations, in our own team situations, in our own organizations and institutions. This will stay with us for a very, very long time, sir. Thank you so much. We also promise you that we'll read those books and we'll keep them in our libraries. More than keeping books in libraries or reading them, the biggest lesson is to implement them, get off the ground, implement them, and make sure that it is impacting millions of people in the country, or at least hundreds of people around us to start with. This is one great lesson. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Mashelkar, the Dr. Mashelkar with you. He has spent a lot of time with us and we are extremely thankful. We are also thankful for you for having joined every week, including this week, and raising some wonderful questions for us to have this meaningful conversation. We will only gain by raising questions. We will only gain by seeking answers from them and making this public. One more lesson from sir is that make it public, make it accessible to everyone, democratize it so that we can get better ideas from the knowledge that we collect together, experience that we share, and the lessons that we distill. So next week again at 6:30 p.m. on 22nd of March, we'll be joined by one civil society leader. And we are going to talk about how we can build India by creating impact. So see you on March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Till then, read more about leapfrogging to pole vaulting and exprovement and Dr. Mashelkar. Have a great weekend. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.